The country was run by this hideous person that you speak of, this dangerous person, for 4 years. And the ship didn't crash and sink. We did okay. John, you must be celebrating over there. Donald J. Trump has been convicted of 34 counts of felonious behavior in a New York City courtroom by a jury of his peers. He's now a felon, a convicted felon awaiting sentencing. Have you broken out the champagne?
No, because it won't make enough of a difference. It makes him a hero to his fans. And there are a certain number of people who apparently feel that if if an appeal can't happen or if an appeal doesn't work, which it won't, then they can't imagine pulling the lever for a convicted felon. But it's not.
Oh, you're quite so sure that you're sure he's going to lose Trump on appeal?
I read that an appeal would be highly unlikely to go through just on the formal grounds. There's just nothing to appeal. And so if there isn't, how many people would that turn? And from what I can see, not enough to change the situation that we're in. I only got a tiny bit of gratification because my sense of popping out the champagne would be less about whether it would make a difference with the election, but if it brought him down a little bit. And that's kind of puerile, but I didn't really get that either because, frankly, he'll just see it as injustice and persecution against him. He did seem to be shocked at first, and I can barely square that with my sense of him. It seems like it actually hurt him that this jury, and he knows it's a jury from New York City, which doesn't like him, that this jury actually did convict him and so completely, but only for a second. And then he was back to his old. So do you find it momentous news? I found it dramatic. I followed the trial closely. I found it interesting, but.
Well, I find it momentous, but not in the same spirit of that you just voiced. I find it momentous in that it exemplifies a turn in American political and legal culture that I think is ominous. It is a clearly politically motivated abuse or opportunistic exploitation of the legal framework in order to accomplish their political goal, which is preventing this guy from being elected president of the United States. And I think that that's debasing the currency. It's poisoning the well. It's injurious to the culture of political competition in the country. And this is not the last we're going to hear of it. Not just in this election cycle, a precedent has been established. And, I have a bad feeling about a foreboding about what that entails. Plus, as you say, I think the net effect, he's wasted scores of millions of dollars in the aftermath of the conviction. Not a single person who was going to vote for Trump before that, or very few who would have voted for Trump before are going to be persuaded by the label felon. The anchors at the networks are telling their Republicans who come on, can you still support him now that he's a convicted felon? To which the answer is, of course I can, because I think the conviction was bullshit. If he had done 34 assaults or carjackings or embezzlements or whatever, that would be one thing. But this is bullshit, is what they're going to say to themselves, rightly, in my humble opinion. So this is not the last we would have heard of this kind of thing, and lawfare is not a healthy development, in my opinion.
Glenn, I know what you mean, and I had a feeling you would feel that way about it.
Yeah,
and I know what you mean about the precedent. That we can't just think about this now. What's the new pattern going to be? But to be honest, and I think you'll find this familiar, I think Trump is such a unique phenomenon that a little bit of vigilante justice or bending the proprieties, I understand it because he's truly a hideous, monstrous prospect as somebody who should be running this country for a second time and presumably thinking of himself as not being responsible for being reelected again, although he's made his noises about trying for a third term. This is
what's so monstrous about him, John? He was president for 4 years. We survived. Where's the monstrosity?
We survived.
I'm not sure I get it.
I think everybody knows what I was going to say. Bragg, I agree that this is politically motivated. It's clear. There's so many other people who have done things like what Trump did in this case, where nobody bats an eye, you wouldn't have a case. Yeah, it's clear that Bragg wanted to get him. And when Bragg gives an interview about it in 30 years with white hair, some interviewer is going to say, most people say it was politically motivated. Was it? And how do you feel? And he's going to say, of course it was. And I think I did the right thing. And I'm going to agree with him. What was so monstrous about Trump? I mean, need we even pretend? He's an immoral person with no respect for or interest in other people, and often an outright scorn for other people explicitly expressed, which he tries to reflect in actual policies. He was reined in somewhat, but the fact that all these things were even floated, his behavior with overseas leaders, his cult-like devotion, not only to Putin, but the idea that he and Jong-un fell in love, etc., where it's all about his narcissism, even when it's about international geopolitics, is pathetic, it's embarrassing, and it's dangerous. And just in general, to have a president who's incapable of paying attention to detail or policy, where everything is really just all about him, and to an extent beyond that of any president I can think of in history. All of them, of course, have to be about themselves, but Trump is a gorilla. I think to have the country run by somebody who can't pay attention and surrounds himself with sycophants, it's not a good situation.
The country was run by this hideous person that you speak of, this dangerous person, for 4 years. And the ship didn't crash and sink. We did okay, frankly. I mean, the pandemic came along. I don't think you're going to blame that on Trump. Are you? I thought the economy was doing kind of okay. The world didn't suddenly become on fire with war all over the place because Trump was president. I mean, sure, of course you can criticize him about his policies, but I don't see this hideousness. I see a guy who's hit a note in American politics in this first part of the 21st century. And, it's politics as usual. And I don't see anything exceptional about Donald J. Trump, exceptionally evil. I mean, compared to Hillary Rodham Clinton, compared to Joseph Robinette Biden, these are politicians. They have pluses, they have minuses, they have fans, they have detractors, they have flaws. They're evil? Is Trump evil? You think he's evil? Do you think he's a racist? You had a column recently about suppose he had said the N-word, in which I thought you even downplayed the instinct to latch on to, Trump malapropism as indicative of his moral turpitude or something like that. Did I read you incorrectly?
No, he's a casual bigot. I've never found that terribly interesting. Many people would be surprised at how little I've actually written about it. He's elderly and ignorant and of a certain time and place. I'm sure he's said the N-word quite often, but it's not surprising, and it's not the important point. However, evil, no. To be honest, that assigns to him an agency I don't think he has. He's mentally 5. But that really scares me. And also, Glenn, don't you think that, with him trying to subvert the election and not apologizing for it, and basically all but saying that if he doesn't win, it couldn't possibly be legitimate. Again, that's the reasoning of a 5-year-old. And you think that it's appropriate that somebody who incited that riot and won't apologize for it should get another term to run the country?
Now, I'm on the record saying that he should have stepped down after he exhausted his options in the courts after 2020, and that his willingness to look for extraordinary means in order to inhibit the due inauguration and installation of the winner of that election as president was deeply problematic. And you could even argue disqualifying. I said I was wrong about Trump after that because I think the lack of deference to the unwritten rules about how you conduct yourself in this office, which is a trust that each person who occupies the office is has bestowed upon them. And I think Trump abused that trust in his post-election behavior in 2020, early 2021. And I have a problem with that. I didn't say I was voting for him, but I do notice that he's ahead in the polls in a lot of places. And I also noticed that Joseph Robinette Biden doesn't happen to be free from taint of the sort that people are quick to ascribe to Trump. And I'm just struck by this narrative that we're going to save democracy by preventing the people of the country from voting for somebody whom they want to vote for. That our best arguments are we can't have him elected again. Not we have a vision, not here's our program, not vote for this. It's vote against that. And, I find that not especially flattering to the other side who are opposing Trump. If he's that bad, it shouldn't be so hard to persuade the voters of North Carolina, of Florida, of Arizona, of Michigan, of Minnesota, of Wisconsin, of Pennsylvania, of Ohio. Shouldn't be that hard to persuade the voters. It is hard, and that makes me think, well, maybe it's that the other side is very weak and they're grasping for a narrative, not that this guy is as bad as people say he is.